Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's event. We have sitting next to me, but actually miles and miles away, is Alex Farling with Lifecycle Insights. So Alex, you want to quickly say hi here?
Hey everybody, how we doing today?
So Alex, how's your day going so far?
It's going well. I can't complain at all. It's getting nice here in Maryland. We've got the windows open. They're closed just for this webinar because I know if I leave them open, that's the time when the lawnmower will drive by. But it is the season down here. The flowers are up and the weather's getting nice, and we no longer are hiding inside. So life is good here.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, it's beautiful here in Michigan. Spring is here. I love it. But we're here for business.
Keith is already confused. He thinks we're at the tech bar.
That could end badly. Thursday. It is Thursday.
It is tech bar day. I forgot about that.
That is true. I mean, Keith. It's Keith. So, all right. So today we're here to talk about business, and we are going to discuss remote QBRs that deliver real value with, of course, Lifecycle Insights. And QBRs is one of those, love to hate things, right? A lot of times people, just despise them, but they're a great thing to increase business and develop relationship.
It's not just the people in the industry that despise them, right? It's customers sometimes. One of the biggest complaints we hear, and I actually spent some time with one of our customers today, which is really ironic. I sent you an email and said we never get this question, and then an hour later I got the question, which was I'm having trouble getting my customer to come to the table. And so that's a pretty common question. We've seen it all over the internet, and I got it in my email this morning. So it's not just MSPs, it's not just BCIOs and account managers who dislike these things. Sometimes customers don't like them. They don't like to come to the table for a number of reasons that we'll talk about today. So yeah, it's a tough topic, but it can be a really valuable one, and it can really deliver to the bottom line of the MSP, to the experience for your customer, and really to the experience for the MSP and their staff.
Exactly. And before we kick it off, just quick housekeeping here for everybody. Any questions that you have, please feel free to throw them into the chat or the Q&A. We're here for you, so we want to answer whatever questions you have. And we also will be recording this, so if you have other members of your team that you want to share this content with, you will receive an email. It'll be tomorrow with a recording of this event, and you can go ahead and share that with others. So with that, Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you to kick it off, and here we go.
Sure. So for those of you who don't know us, Lifecycle Insights has been around. We've been out of beta since 2019, IT Nation, so about 18 months. And we were built because at my MSP at the time, we had a real hard time taking all the data that existed in ConnectWise and IT Glue and LabTech Automate, whatever you want to call it, and all the other additional tools that we had a lot of trouble taking all that info and cobbling it together into reports that meant something to our customer. It was really easy to go to ConnectWise and say, in the last 6 weeks, we've closed 100 tickets for this customer. They should love us. But when we went to them with those kind of stats, they didn't love us. They didn't care. So it was really, we were born out of necessity of figuring out how to take the data that already existed for MSPs and put it in a usable fashion that actually drove customer interaction, that actually drove sales, and that, for lack of a better word, dumbed the technology down to the level of that C-suite of executives that you're sitting there talking to. You might have the best chief revenue officer in the room, great sales guy who's just absolutely killing it. You might have the best CEO and the best CFO in the room. They still don't understand technology. So we need to find ways to dumb that technology down for them that we can make it work. So with that, we built Lifecycle Insights. We launched into the market. The market's been wonderful for us. We've had great growth. We have some just amazing partners, and but that's really led us to even deeper evaluate this whole quarterly business review. And we'll use the phrase quarterly business review throughout the talk today, but it's really not a phrase that we're fans of. As a company, we hate the term. It should stand for quarterback rating. It should have nothing to do with what we do as MSPs, because the sad truth of it is most MSPs aren't doing them quarterly. A significant number of customers don't want or need them quarterly. So when we reference QBR today, think about this from a perspective of it doesn't have to be a quarterly thing. We use that term because the industry knows it. It's not necessarily the right or the appropriate term for what we're doing. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and we'll kick it off with a slide deck and we'll start some conversation. Oh, I need you to give me permission to share my screen, Dan.
There you go.
First technical blunder.
At least it's not as bad as Windows 95 launch for Bill Gates on stage
Right?
that awesome day.
Well, we haven't got through this yet, so thanks for let me find something hard to knock on over here. So obviously today we're talking about quarterly business reviews that really deliver value, and really more importantly, how to do this remotely. Doing this face to face was easy. We could walk in the door with a printed deck that we were going to deliver to the customer, and we used to print them and we'd bind them and put a plastic cover on one side and a hard black cover on the back, and put them in those little comb binders and go deliver a take home for the customer, and we could handwrite in it and do all these things that really had some value. When we switched to this whole work from home thing, life just changed and we didn't have those same tools. So with that, I really want everybody to take one of my favorite questions and just sit and contemplate this for a second while Dan throws us a poll. But are you really giving your customers the technical business review, the quarterly business review, the strategic business review that they deserve? And I say that in that way only half jokingly, because our customers really do deserve to have data that matters to them. Are we presenting to them the data that we want them to have? Are we presenting to them the data that they need? And are we presenting it regularly and in a fashion that matters? And some interesting answers. We got at least two people.
Another 20 seconds here.
A few folks with the face for radio, but other than that, some pretty good answers. I suggest for those folks, we hire someone.
Very, very well, said there. It's I love that radio phrase, right? It's it can be used in so many ways.
I use it jokingly all the time because, and Marnie and I were talking about this while we're wrapping up the poll. Marnie and I were talking about this morning when I did my first presentation as a Lifecycle Insights, as the Chief Customer Experience Officer out in front of MSPs who were my peers for the longest time. As I did my first presentation, I was just nervous as all heck. I'm terrible at PowerPoints and all this. And she's like, it took you an hour to put this one together. The last one, the first one you did took like 36 hours and 10 practice runs and all that. So sometimes just that feeling that they don't want to see me is sometimes it's personal. Sometimes it's like, I don't want to go stand in front of that group and tap dance because it's uncomfortable for me as an MSP. Sometimes that's just a thing. So the most common answer we got was everything works. They don't want to talk about it. That's one of my favorite answers. It is absolutely a terrible excuse not to do business reviews, and we'll get into that today. We got a couple that are my clients don't see the value, and a couple that I forget to do them quarterly. I want to start with, this is a process. This is something that you have to build into your process, right? We don't forget to patch. We don't forget to back up. Forgetting to do QBRs means we haven't made it a process. We haven't made it a priority. We haven't dedicated the resource to it. Clients that don't see the value, everything works and they don't want to talk about it. Those two fall into a similar bucket where we're making mistakes as MSPs, which is why they feel this way. And we'll talk about that a lot today. And then, of course, the last one is either a couple of folks joking, which we like to do. We like to have fun here, but or they're folks who are maybe uncomfortable getting out in front of their customers. And if you're uncomfortable getting out in front of your customers, the only advice I can give you is start with your most friendly customers. Start with your favorite customers, the ones who you have permission to make a mistake in front of. Go out and screw it up. Practice it and get it right, and then carry it on to your tougher and tougher customers as you go, because you will screw it up the first time, right? If you're not doing this regularly, it's like any other process. It's not going to go smoothly as we go. So
I'd also just like to recommend too that practice in front of a business mentor, practice in front of somebody that might even be in your business, but you want to practice with somebody that's going to be brutally honest with you as far as where there might be opportunities for improvement. But even if you're doing the role playing, it can have a significant impact on your preparation and your confidence as you do go out there.
Sometimes just having presented it to someone and having somebody say back to you, no, that didn't look stupid at all. It's super empowering, right? I know I got off my first presentation and I was like, oh my God, thank goodness it's over, right? And then I hear back, hey, there's some good stuff in there. I found some valuable nuggets. And you do a couple of those and you get to hear that. And all of a sudden you get a little bit of confidence and you're okay to go up and go, oh, I might screw up something, but I'll still deliver some value somewhere else and we'll be okay. And you do this all the time, right? Anybody who spends as much time broadcasting as you are has to make a mistake from time to time. Things
Absolutely.
go wrong, right? We forget to give somebody share permissions. Somebody gets stuck on mute. Something
Yep.
goes sideways or silly. You learn to recover from it. You learn to bounce back, and then it's just not the end of the world.
We're human. Yeah.
Yeah. So that brings us to kind of the answer to one of those questions, which is why customers don't see the value. And you and I talked kind of as we were prepping for this about a Reddit thread that you came across. Do you want to summarize that Reddit thread real quick and kind of let people hear what's being said out there?
Yeah, what really is amazing that I discovered is that there was a person who was saying that my clients, they don't want to meet with me at all, and he wasn't sure what to do. And I was reading through some of the comments, and there was a variety of people that were just struggling, to gain that interest. They didn't know what to present. They weren't sure if the clients, we're going to see value in it. And they haven't done it yet. And,
Yeah.
They're just struggling.
And the really ironic thing is this slide was built before we came across that Reddit thread, but this is probably the most common reason or some semblance of this, right? My customers don't see the value. My customers, everything's fine, and they don't want to meet with me. They just don't want to put the time in. They're busy, and all of these relate back to typically some mistakes that MSPs are making. So we'll go into those here in just a second. There was a comment on that Reddit thread though that I want to bring up because it really gets to one of my favorite points about QBRs. And that comment was, if you can't get your customers to show up, maybe you should just record your business review and send it to them digitally. They can listen to it at their convenience. They can fast forward through it, play it at double speed, whatever. And I want to really push back on that thought process. The process that this whole thing, and you'll see my fourth bullet point is calls that should have been an email. If your business review can be recorded, could have been handled in an email, could be just a quick telephone call to your customer, you're not doing a strategic business review. You're not doing a quarterly business review. You're sending them some reports, and then you're reading them the reports. And that's really big. We talk a whole lot about strategy and keeping it strategic versus being tactical and product focused. So if you're being tactical in these type of engagements, you're going out and telling the customer, look, we patched all your servers, we got all of our backups done, we answered all your tickets within the SLA. One of my favorite quotes came from one of our partners who said service level arguments, right? SLAs don't matter if you're meeting them. They only matter if the client's pissed off. It doesn't matter if your SLA was 4 hours. If the client needed it fixed in an hour, you're not going to get a happy customer because it took you 4 hours to fix something that they needed done right away. But if you're in here just using this as an opportunity to brag and show your value to your customer, I think you've missed the point of what these business reviews really are supposed to deliver to your customer, and we'll dig into that. Technical content. Our customers, again, who's the guy from England who does the marketing? His name's going to escape me now. Paul. Yeah. Anyway, there's a gentleman who does a ton of MSP marketing who says that the average customer, Paul Green. Yeah, Marnie saved me.
Yes.
Tom and Marnie are on it. So Paul Green says the average MSP customer hires us because they lack enough technical understanding to even know what we're presenting to them. So when you present this stuff to your customer, if you don't distill it way, way, way down, you're going to fail your customer because they're not going to understand what you're delivering. Heavy sales pitching. Customers don't like to get to schedule time on their calendar to have you roll in with a stack of quotes and just roll through a sales pitch to them and tell them why they need to spend more money. I had a customer that told me if I brought in one more sales quote, he was going to go get the shotgun out of the shotgun rack in the back of his truck, and we were going to have a different conversation. And this was in Southern Delaware, and he was a hunting redneck. And rednecks are my people, love them. I'm one of them. But I took it seriously, right? That was a sign to me that we needed to approach this a little bit differently. And then, of course, we've got calls that should have been an email. If it should have been an email, it means it's something tactical. It means it's something actionable. And I would add to that the stipulation of QBRs that could have been handled in a ticket. If it's actionable, if it can be done right now by an engineer or by anybody in your business, just by handing them a ticket and go fix this, it is not strategic enough to justify taking up your client's time, scheduling a meeting, building reports, going out to them, meeting with them, and giving them that stuff. So if it is so tactical that you could do it in a single engagement, in a single email, in a single ticket, then you're probably not being strategic, and you need to relook at your content there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's go look at another poll here. And while we're doing this poll, we're going to think about, can you put a price tag on your client's QBRs? And the reason I ask that, and our poll question is going to be, what's the number one struggle you face in delivering your QBRs remotely? But while you're doing that, while you're answering that one, let's think about this. Can you put a price tag on your client's QBRs? And I ask that for a couple of reasons. Number one, your client's QBR costs you money. If you can't put a price tag on it, it means you probably didn't build it into your service plan. It means that you probably didn't account for 3 hours a quarter to go give that client a quarterly business review, prep all the documents, get everything right, everything ready. And pre-Lifecycle Insights, we had clients who were telling us it was taking them 7 and 8 hours to prepare for a QBR at $150 an hour. That's a really expensive meeting.
Yeah.
So if you can't put a price tag on the value that you're delivering there, guess what? Your customer is. Excuse me. Your customer's putting a price tag on it simply because, number one, they know you're going to come in with a pile of quotes. That costs some money. Number two, if you're doing this right, you're bringing in their most expensive employees to come have this meeting. You're bringing in a stack of employees, their CFO, their CEO, their COO, their director of marketing, their somebody from the sales team, somebody from the marketing team, somebody from service delivery, somebody from each of these teams. And I'd be curious to hear from MSPs if you're getting those kind of people in the room, or if you've just got one person in the room, your point of contact, or somebody else. You can't be strategic and talk about delivering a solution to business-wide problems if you're just talking to somebody in one department, especially not if that department's finance, because you're just there to beg for money. So you can put a price tag on this. You should put a price tag on this, but so can your customer. And if you're not careful, they will. And that's what's kind of interesting there. So this poll, I think we're good with it. We got some pretty good responses. The number one reason that folks aren't coming out and doing it turns out to be that they'd have to develop a process before they can answer this question. So again, we haven't put a process around it. And that goes back to, we never forget to patch. It's not that we don't know how to patch. We never forget to back up, and we know how to back up. If we learned how to do a QBR and implement it into our regular processes, it would just happen. Some folks are struggling. 17% of folks are struggling for preparing that slide deck, getting the information together. That was my biggest struggle, but I was a sales-focused MSP owner. I was comfortable having the conversations. I wasn't afraid of that. Keith is still on mute, so and a couple of his friends. We still got some folks on mute, but other than that, and I'm glad to hear that that nobody's really panicked over the getting things right in their office, making the presentation themselves. We've all been doing COVID long enough that I think we've learned how to handle those things. But we'll talk about it just a little bit. We'll chat about some tips and tricks that we've learned from the guys like Ray Orsini and Wes over at Perch, that have their their $1 million setups and some cheap things we can do to make it a little better. And we'll talk about a couple of those today.
And also, I just want to throw out, and this kind of goes back to the beginning of some of this too, is I often see in Facebook groups and Reddit, wherever, a lot of we'll just call them complaints. Let's just call it what it is. A lot of people upset with vendors contacting us all the time, trying to set up a meeting, whether it be a business review and actually most of it is a lot of times is business reviews. And I think we have to really put ourselves in the role or in the shoes of the client from that perspective when we get those vendor calls, and think about it from that perspective. Okay, this is what I'm doing to my clients. So how could this vendor do it differently, not to make me upset?
But Dan, as an MSP, what I do is important. What those vendors do isn't important.
Of course. I mean, yeah.
But perspective is everything, and that's kind of where we fail on this one, right? We think that what we do is important, and what that MSP vendor who's calling me for, that I've already got a product that does what he does, I don't want to talk to him. But you're 100% right. There is just a misconception there that those people are different somehow from us and how we present to our client.
I'm a firm believer. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I think that's why we got to have the conversation about, are we delivering value when we go to meet with them, or do they just feel sold to?
Yep. And I'm a firm believer in when those opportunities come up to have that discussion with the vendor, or especially in this case when we're trying to meet with our clients, I mean, you never know what new information they're going to bring to the table. You never know about maybe some new offering that is going to fill a need that you've been looking for with their product.
Yeah.
And give them the chance, because that's the way you improve your business, by learning about, new technologies. It cannot be, this is how we've done it in the past, so this is how we're going to do it always in the future. Have an open mind to just listen.
Well, and we had kind of a warm-up conversation to this yesterday on your call,
Yeah.
the Everything MSP call at noon, and a couple of the folks there really talked and focused on business outcomes. If you're focused on business outcomes, then you're not pushing product, you're not pushing a sale, you're
Right.
helping the customer solve for what drives their revenue, what drives their business, what might give them a multiple of sales in which they can now afford to pay you no matter what you charge. Life is different if you approach
Yeah.
it from that perspective. And there's some folks on that call who claim to not be very good salespeople, Keith Nelson, who happen to be really, really great salespeople, because they understand
Yeah.
that if they approach it from a different angle, if you're not in there going, hey, buy, open the trench coat on the street, buy my stuff, close the trench coat, and run away, right? If you're
Right.
not selling something out of the trunk of your car, if you're in there saying, I can help you solve for a business problem, then you'll get their attention. And
Yeah.
but putting the price tag on the meeting, I want to take a step back to that, because when I had my MSP, my largest customer it was a nonprofit, and they had a bunch of different divisions at the nonprofit. So each division had a department head. We had a CEO, a CFO, a COO. There was a head of HR. All of those people would come represented to this meeting, and I could have anywhere from 8 to 12 or so people in that room. And when I sat down and looked at it, that customer was taking, just in payroll dollars and loaded employee costs, about $800 an hour to pile all those people in one room and listen to me speak. Listen to me, just try and engage them in a conversation. And back in my early days, when I was going in with a sales pitch, they didn't get a lot of value out of it. And it was like pulling teeth to get them to schedule. And once I figured out that it was more about business outcomes and more about enabling them with technology and more about making sure that the sales department needs to get what they need to get, the finance department needs to get what they need to get, we need to fit it all into a budget and find a way to make it work for everybody, then all of a sudden it's a strategic conversation. And when you've got multiple groups engaging you at the same time, multiple departments in a company engaging in the same operation, then all of a sudden there's also some shared risk, some shared skin on the pavement that, hey, if we get this product out, we can save them labor over here and money over here, and maybe pay for the product or service, or at least help justify some of those costs. So think about your customer and what they're doing. They're generally taking the most expensive people in their organization, and they're bringing them into a meeting with you. You need to deliver value in accordance with that. And don't think that every CEO you sit down and talk to doesn't think he's worth $500 an hour, regardless of what he charges or what he actually makes. So that, in my mind, is a pretty interesting just spin on things. And it kind of came to me as I was working with my biggest MSP client, who happened to be my first customer when I bought my MSP, and we still had 17 years later when I sold my MSP. So there's a lot of value in just that relationship with those kind of clients. The other thing and we kind of talked about strategic content focused on business goals. This is another thing that just drives value, right? If you don't know what your customer's business goals are, how are you going to help them meet them? If we're not having that conversation with our customer, hey, Dan, do you want to grow your MSP 10% this year, or 22, 47? Pick a number out of a hat, because the amount of technology you're going to need to hit each one of those numbers is way different. The impact that technology has on each one of those numbers is way different. An ERP system or some kind of marketing and communication system has a much bigger impact on a company who's trying to grow 25, 35, 45% than it does on a company who's happy with maintaining status quo. So if we've had the conversation about what the business's goals are, we can work to help them meet those outcomes. If we never stop to have that conversation, if we don't know what the end goal is, we can't get there. And an important note is, this conversation needs to happen before your QBR, because you needed to come prepared to have it. So there's some prep work that goes into a QBR that we'll talk about, that includes collecting up some business goals, learning where your customer's at, learning where their particular niche may be, where their industry's at, what's changing. Are they contracting with COVID? Did they blow up with COVID? Are they a testing lab that has increased 10 times their revenues because of COVID? You need to know that, and you need to know how this all applies to them. And then, yeah, go ahead.
I was to say, so when you take a look at that $800 meeting call, I mean, that that is perfect to have that number and know what that is, because it actually is something we should know already, though, because
Yeah.
when we're in the, in the sales process and we're learning about the organization, and we're talking about the value we provide of taking over managing their technology. So whether it's, I know we had a specific account that was an attorney who was the person who was managing their IT.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how much do you bill per hour?
We
And
think we're expensive till we see what they do. Yeah.
yeah. So when I learned how much he billed per hour, and I talked about the value that we provide, allowing him to get the full, $300 an hour that he's billing out, all of a sudden he's like, you're right. And, that's just looking at him,
Yeah.
just one person.
Yep.
So, capture that in the beginning sales process, so you have an understanding of what that value looks like.
Well, and
And
the
what
other
it's
thing
gonna cost.
and the other thing you need to know is, what does it look like to make a decision in this organization? What's the decision-making process? Because if it requires 3 people or a board of directors, you need to have all those people in the room, because otherwise
Right.
everything gets lost in translation. If you can't get those folks in the room, you probably shouldn't even be doing the meeting. And if you need to go have a quarterly business review with a board of directors, then that's what you need to do. We had a client that annually we would meet with the town council, and it was because that was part of their decision making process. We had to go meet that requirement to make sure that we had the right people in the room to make the decisions. So from there, the other thing we really want to talk about is risk and exposure. We're in a different world than we were when I started my IT company. I bought my company for a pittance, back in 2004, and it was a mom and pop break fix computer shop, and a lot of folks in this industry came from there. The risk back then on technology was just near zero compared to what it is today. And of course, my dog decides to come in with his squeaky toys while we're doing a QBR or while we're doing a webinar. So back then, risk and exposure just wasn't what it is today. China, Russia, North Korea didn't have the resources at their disposal that they do today. Nation state attacks and ransomware weren't the thing that they are. So risk and exposure is way bigger, way more important today. But guess what? Your customer still doesn't understand it. So we're right back to, we need solutions to risk and exposure. They deliver value. Mr. Customer, I can keep you up and running in the event that there is a ransomware attack. We can limit how long you're down. We know we have recoverable backups. We don't have to bow to pressure to pay ransoms. We make sure that we're protected just from little things like the internet going out, knowing what kind of a risk that is to your business. Are they hemorrhaging cash when the internet's out, or can they pop up a MiFi and continue to operate with a little bit that they need the internet? Depends on their business. So we need to take all that, distill it down, present it simply. My favorite is red, yellow, green. Hey, what does this do to this customer? For a customer that's green, life is good, we don't care. Red, probably worth looking at. And then the last thing is the consultation from the C-level. And I always like to say that when you're getting to the C-level talk, this is somebody who can actually talk business operations. And this is where so many employees fail, right? As a business owner, you can come talk to me and say, Alex, I understand what it's like to struggle to make payroll. My account manager can't walk into my client and say, are you gonna make payroll this month? Is everything okay? He looks like a guy who's got his nose way in where things don't belong. A real VCIO, regardless of whether or not they're an owner, has some understanding of how businesses operate at the top level, and can have these top level business outcomes conversations and even business inputs conversations, what it takes to get from creating a product to generating revenue to making payroll to doing more R&D to running back around that circle. A real VCIO can have those conversations. And I think every MSP should take a quick look and say, do I have an account manager doing this job, or do I have that CIO, that VCIO doing the work? And I think you can have a single VCIO going to these meetings and supporting 2 or 3 account managers at scale, maybe 4. But if you're a small MSP and you have an account manager, but you don't have that VCIO, you probably, as the owner, should be going with your account manager to these meetings. Let him prep for them, but come in and have those tough conversations. And that's what we did at my MSP. My account managers would take it and run with it, especially for our small clients. All of our bigger clients, I went and had those conversations with them because they knew me. They knew that I understood how their businesses operated. They had been my customers for a long time. And we just had that rapport, and I could say, hey, what's COVID doing to you? Are you going to be okay? And they would answer me. They wouldn't answer my account manager as honestly or as candidly. So, I think there's just different conversations you can have at different levels there. So in order to really deliver value, we need to be on that business focus.
And you will know when you make that connection with a C-level executive, a business owner, all of a sudden you're having this conversation, and it completely changes when you are talking business. The direction of the conversation, the interaction, their overall engagement is just rock solid. It's
They
just,
almost lean across the table to you, right? And you
yes,
can feel it in the room.
absolutely.
Yep, you can
Yeah.
feel it in the room. So
Yeah.
you've got one more poll for us.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk a little bit about why clients don't want to come to QBRs. And this typically, and I hate to do this to our MSPs, because this is very much a turn around and point the finger back at the MSPs. It is almost 100% our fault. It doesn't matter whether it's because we did it wrong the first time and now they don't see value in it going forward, or we didn't present it in a good way. For this time, we just called them up and said, "Hey, you want to meet so I can try and sell you some stuff?" So there's a lot that we can do to overcome this. But generally speaking, when clients don't want to come to these, there's one of a couple of things going on. We presented poorly once, we've already failed them. We're asking them to meet too often and they're not seeing enough value in it. Or we're just simply not delivering the right opportunity for them to come to us and have this meeting. We're just calling them up and, hey, we need to have a strategic meeting. We need to have a quarterly business review. And they're going, quarterly business? My stuff runs, leave me alone. Well, there's consultants out there saying you should have a cybersecurity business review because that brings more urgency. If you're a big traction fan, you can go meet with your client and have your same page meeting to make sure that you're on the same page as they are. It doesn't have to be a QBR. I see 57% of folks are trying to perform these quarterly. That's great. I would argue very much that 57% of your clients probably don't need them quarterly. So there's some conversation to be had around who gets them and when. And this goes a long ways towards getting your clients to want to come back to these meetings. I would argue that depending on how technical their industry is, a dentist, a doctor, anybody in the medical field, anybody who's in engineering or who's deeply regulated or dependent on technology probably needs to meet with you more often. My favorite manufacturing firm at my old MSP, if I met with them once a year, they were perfectly happy. All they used their computers for was to print QuickBooks labels and balance the checkbook, right? They printed their mailing labels and their stuff, and they shipped out. They made the metal pallet strapping that goes around big pallets. They weren't technology savvy. They just weren't. They had 10 computers in a 10,000 square foot warehouse, and all they did was crank out these pallets full of stuff. So there was very little value in me going to them to have these big conversations. So the fact that 57% of folks are meeting with their clients quarterly, that's great. I would argue that at least every one of those folks at the end of their next QBR should ask their customer, what kind of value did we deliver to you today? And if the answer is not a raving, knocked out, that was awesome, I need to see this again in 3 months, then the question is, what kind of a cadence should we be having these meetings on? Does quarterly make sense for you, or would you like to drop back to biannual? Right? If you have these, or semi-annual. If you have these semi-annually, you're not really doing your client any more disservice. Not if they're willing to show up and be engaged, and you have to pull teeth to get them there. So I'm not upset with semi-annually. I'm not upset with annually, unless I'm meeting annually with a $10,000 a month customer. Chartech has a really great number that they use, and they say for every $1,000 that you spend with your client, or every $1,000 that your client spends with you annually, you should have one meeting with them annually. So a $2,000 a month client, you should be meeting with semi-annually. A $4,000 a month client, you should be meeting with 4 times a year. You get above that, you get into some special cadences and some different things. But a $1,000 a month client, 1 meeting a year, unless they're in some kind of a really specific, really high tech industry where they need to see you more often than that. So I think there's a lot to be said for just making sure that that we're delivering on a cadence that matters to our customer as much as it matters to us.
And while there are some clients that no matter what, you're just not going to get them to a meeting, there's going to be some of them like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's a small percentage. I'd say maybe 10%.
But I think what's happening though is we cling to, oh, they don't want to meet, so they don't want to meet, and we move on, versus, understanding the reasons why they don't want to meet, and helping to position it so they know that is going to be of value for them, and it's going to help contribute to their business. Like you said, if it's just an info dump, then they're going to say no. But we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our clients to to not let that be an excuse that, oh, they just said no.
Yeah.
You just don't want to be that annoying, that annoying person and continuing to push. But on the other hand, you don't want that person that you hear the first no, I don't want to meet, and then you just back off.
Well, sometimes number one, your client needs to realize their network can't be more important to you than it is to them. Right. We had that problem at my MSP, and especially one of my account managers. He cared more about every client we ever had than they ever did about their own network. And he took it personal when they wouldn't meet with him. So, it took a lot of work to figure out what's the right cadence for each client, and why are we getting the no's, and what can we do to get fewer no's. But one of the things that we did with our scheduling was, number one, we used a Calendly type app product. We used Microsoft Bookings at my MSP, but now I use Calendly. Sending your client an email and giving them the option to schedule on your calendar makes it so much easier on them, because your point of contact can go touch the 5 people they know you want in the meeting. They can see their calendars internally on 365. They can go, oh, this date and time looks good. Yep, that's free on Alex's calendar. Check, done. Right. So we moved over to a booking system, so it wasn't a lot of back and forth to get it scheduled. So frictionless interaction with you. And then the next trick is send a couple of emails, have a couple of canned emails that you can send out to set these things up, and use a product to send those emails, to send the invites, that lets you know when your customer's opening it. There's a big difference between my email never got opened, they're busy, they just didn't see it, and they're blowing me off. My third email to my clients, the first one was, hey, it's time for your scheduled meeting. The second was, there's some important cybersecurity things we should talk about. The third one, the subject of the email was, the network's down. Guess what?
Right.
100% open rate. 100%. When they didn't answer that email and I could see it, I could go right out and look in MailChimp and say, they never answered that email. Or they opened it, they just didn't respond. Now I know I'm being ducked.
Yeah.
And now I can pick up the phone and call my customer and go, hey, my insurance company requires that I come meet with you on a semi-regular basis to review risk and exposure. The world is a way dirtier place than it was the last time we met. Oh, wow, you haven't met with me since 2018. This is unacceptable. We have to sit down. You have to commit to this. It's just not an option. My insurance company is not going to allow me to continue to provide you service if we can't have some real strategic meetings. And they're going to go, every time you come in here, you just want to sell me something. No sales pitch. I'll take my sales hat off. I just need you to see, this is where my risk and exposure lives. If you don't want to do anything about it, sign a document that my insurance company has given me that says, Alex is off the hook for it all, and I'll go away. Right. But it can't. But right now, it's more important to me than it is to you, Mr. Customer, and that's a bad relationship. And sometimes you just need to pick up the phone and have that come to Jesus call. And if you have account managers, they probably can't have that call with your customer. That's something that if you have account managers in your organization, they need to bubble it up to you and come to you and say, Dan, I got a problem. I got a guy. All 3 of my emails went out, and he won't pick up the phone. He won't call me. He won't schedule anything. He's read all the emails. He's just ghosted me. Can you go light a fire for me? And as the owners, we need to step up and go do that.
And I would focus on the changing security landscape. What was in the past when it comes to security is completely different than what it is today. So when threats become more intense, when the risks of ransomware, the risk of data leak, all of those aspects, when those risks continue to grow, you need to have a defense that's going to grow along with that, right?
So, and all your clients understand that, right? They all watch 60 Minutes. Whether there's any value to it as TV or not anymore, that's totally debatable. But they're all watching it. They know North Korea's in the hacking business. They know that SolarWinds got breached. They know that Facebook got breached. Your clients are paying attention to this stuff. In fact, the latest Facebook and LinkedIn breaches, and if you guys didn't see it, Facebook was last week, LinkedIn is this morning, both lost 500 million contacts. These are opportunities to reach out to your clients and say, this is terrible publicity. I'd hate for you to have that experience. Let's sit down and talk and make sure we're still in alignment with all of our best practices.
Because then you're not talking hypotheticals,
Yeah, and we're not fear mongering. We're talking about real world incidents. SolarWinds, Facebook, LinkedIn. Name companies with bigger cybersecurity budgets than them.
Yeah.
So we need to have our ducks in a row. It's not just about you spent the money, you hired an MSP, and he's gonna take care of me. We're gonna be okay. So how do we get them to show up? First things first, I always lead with an agenda. This is one of those things where your customer doesn't want to show up because they don't know what you're going to talk about, but they assume it's going to be just a stack of invoices and you going, I need you to pay me for this. I need you to pay me for this. I need you to pay me for this. Thank you very much. That was a great meeting. Love seeing you guys. Hope your kids do great at soccer. I'm out of here. right?
Oh,
And
while you're at it, there's 4 quotes over here. That's a 5,000, a 10,000, a 12,000, and a 2,000. And I need you to sign off on these and get your credit card.
your clients are like elephants. They still remember that you came to them at the last minute for Windows XP and said you need to replace 40 computers by the end of the year, right? They still remember that. They're still bitter about it. They don't want to have a meeting with you still because of that. And it's, over a decade later. So we need to make sure that we present to them what we want to talk about with room for them to communicate back to us. And when we send out the recording to this, we're going to include a sample agenda. I'd like for all the MSPs to kind of take that agenda, tear it apart, personalize it, and make it your own. Our agenda is not right for everybody. The agenda we're sending out isn't right for me. The agenda that we're sending out actually has some KPIs and some metrics on it, some of what we call scorecard items. I never use them. I don't review them. I think it's a look into the past. Those are tactical things that if somebody has a problem with how many backups we got, that's a ticket that can be handled on the help desk. It doesn't need me. It doesn't need 8 people in a room for a strategic conversation about why we missed a backup or why we missed a patch. Totally a different thing. Other MSPs are attached to it. They're like, my customers expect to see it. I got to do it. Fine. Deliver it, but make it a very, very, very small, very high level portion of your delivery. Here's your scorecard, Mr. Customer. We nailed this, and this. Moving on. But send that agenda and ask. This is where we ask that customer for the feedback. What's changed in your industry? What's different in your business? How are you making it through COVID? Were you able to bring back those employees you had to lay off? I can see you're still down a few headcount. Is it looking like they're going to be coming back? Do we need to be prepared for that? If you can prep them with some softball questions and say, and fill in this section over here and tell me what you need to talk about, they'll give you feedback. And guess what? Now we're coming to a meeting to talk about stuff that's important to them.
Right.
Guess what? Now they want to show up. Now there's something in it for them. Now, I want to put an exclamation mark on that, because sometimes when you send this out, the feedback that you'll get is not the feedback that you want, right? If Dan sends me my agenda and I go, I want to talk about service ticket 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because Billy was mean to Sally and he didn't answer her for 2 days, right? The first thing I want you to do when you get that agenda back is pick up the phone and go, hey, Alex, I saw this agenda item and it really concerns me. I know we got a meeting in 2 weeks, but I really don't want this to wait that long. Your satisfaction just means too much to me to let this sit and brew for another 2 weeks. Is now a good time, or do you want to talk later today? Because we've got to solve this. And just get that thing off the plate. That is a tactical item. It could be a phone call. It could be an email or a ticket. It's a small item thing. We can deal with it, kill it, and move on. What this does is saves your meetings and keeps them from becoming a bitch fest, pardon my French, and turns it into a real strategic meeting because we've put those things to bed. And guess what? By the time I get to that meeting, now I'm the hero that solved the customer satisfaction issue from 2 weeks ago. And I'm back in their good graces instead of walking in having to duck and cover because they were ready to unload on me. Your agenda is your best friend. Use it heavily, steal the one we put out there, mangle it and make it yours, put your logo on it, take credit for it, whatever. But this is one of the best things that you can possibly do as far as guiding the conversation in the direction you want it to go. And guess what? They're accidentally going to tell you, oh, and we're looking to buy 10 new computers and we're going to open a new office and we should probably talk about that. I forgot to mention it, right? This is your chance to get them to spill the beans so you can come prepared to talk about that. So Corey, I'm glad we're delivering you a little bit of value here. This is some of my favorite stuff. So I get up on my soapbox sometimes and forget whether or not we're delivering value, but I'm hoping we are. The next thing I want to talk about though is, again, we're right back to risk and exposure to business outcomes. Oh, sorry, Carrie. We have a Corey that we work with, and I got a little mixed up there. Again, risk and exposure to business outcomes. If we're talking about Mr. Customer, there's a risk of your entire client database being posted on the dark web. And I never say the dark web. I say, Mr. Customer, what would happen to your business if all of your trade secrets got posted on a billboard on the side of insert major highway here? What would that do to your business, right? Because that's about what it would do to your business, right? If you get ransomed, if you get all your data lost, you've really got to worry about it being all out there. We need to have that conversation. We need to make sure they're comfortable with the remediations that we're putting into place. And we need to make sure that we know what the business outcomes look like if and when there is a breach. We know how to handle it. Cash is king. We are going to list on our agenda that we're going to be providing them with a technology budget. And then we will list on there that we're going to take their input on the technology budget. So they're going to go, oh crap, he's giving me a budget. Oh, no, we're going to talk about that. Right. And what they don't realize is when we go to have the meeting, I'm going to say, here's the budget I've outlined for you. I think it covers everything that I'm concerned about. I took the liberty of writing in here what I think your phone bill is, roughly an estimate, and your cable bill. But I'm thinking, you have that big line of business application that costs you money, and that's technology. It doesn't have anything to do with me, but I'd love to include it in your budget for you. How about your security system and your copier guy? You have that HR app and that other thing over there. And I just go down and make a big long list. And by the time they're done, they're looking at their budget going, and the finance person, this is why we want all the people in the room, the finance person's going, can you give me that in a CSV? Can I get that in Excel? I want to play with that, right? And all of a sudden now we get that engagement that you were talking about, where somebody who's in the room, who's at a C level at the company, sees me delivering value and wants to participate in this conversation. I'm totally okay to go and deliver a budget and say, hey, this isn't really a budget, Mr. Customer. This is just a list of invoices you're going to send to me. Can we make it more complete and help you have a real strategic technology budget? I'm here to help you with that. Well, guess what? Once I'm their budgeting go-to guy for technology, then when the copier contract's up, they're going to go, hey, the copier price is going to change. We're going to have to go get new copiers. Can we have a meeting with a couple copier companies and see what fits our budget?
Yeah.
How many MSPs get their customers to call them and go, can we talk about replacing this thing on the budget next quarter? It becomes part of the regular conversation. You can see the end dates on the contracts if you've collected the contracts from the customer and entered them into the budget, and you can actually sit right in the QBR and go, and I see next quarter your phone system's coming up for renewal. Are you happy with Ring Central, or was the support you got when you switched to work from home a little less than exceptional? Would you like to come see our partners over to IT VoIP, or let us introduce you to somebody else? Right now, I can steer the conversation and I can get them in the partner that, guess what, pays me 20% commission. Right. I think OIT pays like 99% commission, but you can get one of those partners that has a commission plan that you can get an English speaking human on the phone first try, where you really have a good relationship. And then to your customer, you go, price is no different. It's just who you write the check to. If you pay OIT VoIP, you can call me and I'll give you first layer support and one neck to choke. I'll take care of it. Then exactly. Tell Ray I said that. That was definitely for him.
That will be
I was going to send him the recording, but and then the last thing is, getting your clients to show up is really about delivering that value that we've been talking about all day. And the value is in, there's a lot of value in closing your meeting with, hey, Dan, we talked about a lot of things today. We did a risk assessment. We talked about some things that you need to fix. We reviewed a technology budget. I'm going to leave behind this user list and this asset list. You can go over them, but they're not super important to the stuff that raises to the level of worth your time right now. Do you mind just giving me some feedback? What was the value of what we did today? Like if I did this again for you in 3 months or 6 months, would you see value in that? And when Dan goes, yeah, it was useful to me, but I can't see doing this again in less than 6 months. Let's do 6 months. Guess what? I now have a semi-annual client who just told me when he wants to meet next. So I'm going to go, oh, that's a great idea, Dan. Let's meet in 6 months. Okay, I'm clear Tuesday the 14th. What's your schedule look like, right? And we can schedule a meeting. So, and now it's Dan's idea. He's going to show up for it because he told me when to come. So if we can flip this around, and Mr. Customer, can you just tell me a little bit about the value that we delivered for you here today? Or was there something different that you needed to see or hear? It's a great way to get them to give you feedback. If they say no, you didn't really deliver that much value, big red flag. If they're hemming and hawing, probably still a reason you need to dig deeper and go, what did you need to see for me to deliver more value to you and your employees today? And they'll tell you. And it may be you have that one customer who wants to see all the metrics and all the how many patches and how many spams were blocked and how many of all these other technology. They might want to see all the flux capacitors and widgets and gadgets. Very few of them do, but make sure that you ask every client every time, did we deliver value? I've got you on a quarterly cadence. Does it make sense to come back in 3 months, or do you want to push to 6? It's their idea now. If they're a semi-annual customer, hey, is semi-annually still often enough, or do we want to do quarterly? Where are you at? And you kind of know what you want for your customer. Give them 2 options you can live with and get them to pick. Because either of 2 options you can live with is way better than ghosting me and not picking up the phone.
And if you can get them on the calendar for the whole year right away, that's the best thing to do. So if you're going to do them quarterly, get them on the calendar right away. Make sure you're sending a meeting request to them so that they can accept it, so that if there is any changes, you're in control of that. Because if you leave it up to them to put a meeting request in, they or put on their calendar, they might forget. or, whatever the case may be. But another thing I want to mention though, is, how, the good old money tree, wouldn't it be awesome to have a money tree planted in your backyard? I view QBRs along with like a hardware rotation schedule as a true money tree.
Yeah.
These meetings are the way that you can shake that money tree. You can get some, more projects from your clients. And if you don't, view it that way, because when you're looking at your planning, when you're looking at planning your budget for the year, you should be looking at what are my QBRs for the year? What type of dollars do I anticipate that I can get from each of the meetings, and focus it that way. I mean, I've gone into a QBR and end up walking out 2 or 3 hours later. Now, this is very rare. Let me tell you that. It's very rare. You don't want to be in a QBR for 2 to 3 hours unless it's being driven by the client as far as projects and the discussions around business process and ways that you can improve their business. But when I walk out of a 2 or 3 hour meeting, I'm walking out with, $10,000 to $20,000 in project work. And I will meet with them for 2 or 3 hours if they want to talk about, getting more intimate with their business and learning about, the workflow and how you can improve things.
And the timing is interesting. You want to be conscious of their time, right? These are expensive people for them to pull into a meeting. If they want to have that long of a meeting, great. But I'm always conscious of their time. I bring an agenda. My agenda has 5 minutes on this topic, 10 minutes on this topic, 45 minutes on our risk assessment. Like, I have it all spelled out in my agenda. I'm here for 60 to 90 minutes, depending on the client and the situation. If they want to meet longer, it's fine, but I'm going to give them the opt out at 90 minutes because that's the amount of time that I promised them, right? I'll give them as much time as they need. If they're engaged, they're feeling the value, they feel like they want to have this conversation. Brad says, if I asked the customer what they wanted, they'd have told me they wanted faster horses. And it's a Henry Ford quote. And it's a great quote.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And he's basically saying that, it's really easy for a customer who doesn't see the value in what we do is going to take us on take the out every single time to get us to push the meeting back. Okay, well, you want quarterly, I'll take semi-annual. But I think that's a sign. And I think we have to be aware of who our customers are. And if you've got that customer that didn't see the value, that's why you ask the value question first. If they say, no, I didn't get value, then instead of going, do we meet quarterly? Should we just drop this to annually so you don't have to see my face for radio? No, the conversation is, if I didn't deliver value today, what were you expecting to see that you didn't? What could I deliver better or different that would help you see value in this? Dan, you mentioned a lifecycle management plan, and we roll lifecycle management plan right into the budget, right? It's already on there. It's in one document. We can strip it down a document so they have to see one less document. Yeah, I'm going to give them an asset list, and it's going to be color coded, and it's going to show them what we're replacing and why. But if they've already bought into my process, guess what? They don't even have to look at that list. They can see on their budget, they're going to replace 3 PCs this quarter, 3 next quarter, 2 the quarter after. Mr. Customer, are we good with that? Yeah, Sally in accounting's been bitching. When is she going to get hers replaced? Oh, you know what? Let me look at the asset list and I'll tell you, okay, she's in Q3. So if they've bought into the process, we streamline it even further so the meeting goes faster. We get to the point quicker. We give them less and less info. And I'm going to skip ahead because Brad brought out a kick-ass quote, and I'm going to match him with one. And I was going to use this later today, but there is a oh crap! I can see his name. I can see his face, and I can't remember his name. Colin Powell has a quote, yes. And he has a rule that he calls his 40 to 70 rule. And he says, to make every decision, you need at least 40% of the information and no more than 70%. If you're giving your customers 80, 90, 95% of the information, you're overwhelming them. You're giving them what we like to call paralysis of analysis. They're going to stare at the problem to try and figure it out for so long that they never get the problem solved. So I would argue that you can control that quarterly to semi-annual to annual cadence of customers who told you that they got value. You need to solve for the value problem before you go there. But also that if you're giving too much information, it's probably leading to the not delivering value part. And if you can deliver and again, it's a perfect example of, instead of delivering that full asset list showing what gets replaced and when, I've already taken the liberty of filling those into your budget. I also have a list of your vendor contracts. I'm not going to show you the list. I'm just going to show you how they line up in your budget. right? And you can send the vendor list contract to your finance person, and she can take it out of here and decide whether or not there's some more we need to add to here, but I don't need to waste 6 people's time while she reviews that, right? So we distill it down to super simple. Obviously, address the value thing before we give them the opportunity to opt out. But we do want to make sure that we're getting that commitment for that next call.
So, if you have not been doing your QBRs in this fashion, where you're bringing in a budget, you're talking about business process, you're probably used to the owner, the C-level person coming in, and maybe they have an office manager that's in there, but they're coming in, and you see them sitting back in their chair, and you see them on their phone, right? So they're kind of looking up every so often, but you know that they're just not interested. What's going to happen is once you change your approach to delivering your QBRs and you follow, much of this process, what's going to happen is all of a sudden that CEO or that owner is going to be like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on here? What budget? Because no small business has an IT budget. And if you can provide that to them, you are golden.
And if I've sent them an agenda that says, hey, guess what, Mr. CEO who played on his phone for my last QBR, I'm going to need your input, and you have to present to me as part of this. You have to tell me what's going on in your industry, what's changing in your business, what's going on. Put your damn phone down. Let's have a real conversation. This is how we get them into that new, into that new mindset. And we're getting a little nudge here because we're talking too much. We're playing too much. So we're going to throw up a quick poll, and we're going to ask another question. What about the clients who say we aren't ready to meet face-to-face today? COVID life has changed things for everybody. Different municipalities, different states, different counties, different cities are opening up faster than others. If you're in Florida, it's pretty much, anything goes. If you're in New York, you probably get chased off the streets at 5 o'clock at night. And there's everything in between all over the country. So we need to think about when we want to present this. When we used to carry that packet of papers into our client and lay it down in front of them and turn the page for them, how do we do this in a fashion now that we can actually, deliver the same value, but get them to engage, get that guy not to turn off his camera and play on his phone instead of actually talking to me. So are our clients back in the office? Nope. So we got about split half and half, some and most, and somebody here, a couple folks here, obviously from some of those folks, from some of those places that are a little more locked down. So we're going to step forward a little bit here, and we're going to talk about how we can set ourselves up for success to actually make a remote quarterly business review deliver the same value as a traditional one. The big one is process. We talked about it early, so we don't need to beat it to death, but this is a process just like anything else in your MSP. It should be documented, it should be outlined, there should be accountability, and we should have a method for doing this and delivering it in a repeated fashion. So, process is key to everything that we do. Let's just have some thought to that. Marnie Stockman, our CEO over here at Lifecycle Insights, and has an entire life in customer success, did a lot of webinars in her previous life, gave us some really great tips about the pre-work that goes into setting one of these things up. When you're doing these remotely, make sure your lighting's good. Make sure that your lights aren't behind you like mine are. That makes for a much worse room. So if you're doing these for your customers, put on a monitor in front of you with something bright and white on it. Buy some of these cheap lights that will solve for your lighting problems. Natural light is actually the enemy when you do these things. It sounds really counterintuitive, but natural light will cause you to have shadows on one side and not the other. Reliable internet connection. Make sure you're somewhere where you're going to have a connection. If you can cable up. Don't trust the questionable Wi-Fi. Get yourself a digital background. This background here cost me $20 for a pack of 8. They're super cheap. You can buy them online. Somebody will do them up for you like that. So make sure that you're making the right presentation. That your shoe pile and your laundry pile over your shoulders aren't being presented to your client. We're in the business where we can never afford to be messy and never afford to be wrong. We're fighting a cyber war with foreign countries. And so don't give your clients the impression that you're messy, even though there's a potential that you're a little messy and still a badass IT guy. We really want you guys to make the presentation that never gives your client the opportunity to question that. Face the camera, set your camera up right here, eye level, and stand if you can. I don't know if you guys have noticed, I have a standing desk here, so I can up and down and actually stand and present this. It's easier to use hand gestures, and there's a lot of research around the fact that you get better feedback on webinars and presentations where there are actually hand gestures, where you're speaking like a human instead of where your hands are down here below and fidgeting with a pen and you never move from the frame of the camera. So you get a lot better reaction on things like that. The day of, pace yourself. Your agenda should have times already attached to it. Don't let yourself get too tied up with the customer on a specific topic unless you've already cleared it with them that you're going to go long. If you have a topic that you had 5 minutes for and you're 7-8 minutes into that topic, stop and go, Mr. Customer, I know we only scheduled 90 minutes for this and we're kind of running over here. I don't want to short the rest of this conversation. Do we need to schedule another meeting, or are you good to stay 15 minutes late? Make sure that we address that, make sure that we stay on pace, make sure that we deliver everything that we wanted to deliver. Have a plan and a backup plan. Everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. That's the Mike Tyson quote. If you are planning to do this from some sort of a cloud product, you should probably have the printed reports handy, or the Word or the PDF doc handy, so you could scroll through it if you had to, if something was down, if something wasn't working, whatever. Have your phone available for 4G backup if you had to get on and do one of these, when your internet's down. Anything you can do to get the client to engage. Get their items on the agenda, make sure their items take precedence, and encourage them to present and talk through those items. There is a time where you ask a question, stick a pencil in your mouth if you must, and bite on it so you won't talk back to your customer, and just shut up and let them talk. Letting your client have their say is one of the things that actually makes them feel like they were heard, which makes them feel like they got value out of the conversation. Just letting them speak gives them more value. A co-host is a fantastic opportunity. If you can have somebody else, just like Dan did for me today, give you a little bit of engagement, talk back and forth with you, talk back and forth with your client, handle some of the hand raising and the questions and those kind of things, make sure that you're staying on time. It's a really, really valuable task. If you're in a situation where you have an account manager and a VCIO, let the VCIO present, the account manager play co-host, take notes, make sure that everything's accounted for. Your co-host is responsible for making sure that all of your action items are documented, so that when you say, Dan, I promise you when this is over, I will get you X, Y, or Z. Guess what? When I leave, my follow-up is the most important thing, knowing that we get it right. Make sure that you're set up to record it. If there's somebody who's going to miss it, you do want to be able to give them the content. A recording is not a substitute for a regular meeting, but it never hurts to record it so you can go back and see where you did well, where you had room for improvement. And then if you have one of these with a client who you know is going to be long, you sent them the agenda, they gave you this much feedback, they're opening 10 new locations, there's all kinds of stuff got to happen, they've agreed to a 2.5, 3-hour meeting, schedule breaks. Mr. Customer, every 45 minutes we're going to take a break. Nobody wants to we're probably all ashamed to admit how many times we've had to mute a call to go use the restroom. Nobody wants you to do that. Let's build a process that accounts for that. Get a late start. This is one where as soon as I put it on the slide, I got what do you mean by that? Always, always, always give those last couple folks, and if you have the mentality of here's the boardroom door, right, and people are funneling in and you hear them go plop, plop, plop on the participants list as they log in, make sure that the last people get in. A late start gives you just, hey, we're gonna give everybody 2-3 minutes to check in. By the way, Dan, how you doing? How are your kids doing with baseball? Is everything good? I know you guys were working on opening that new location. How's that working out for you? We got all the wiring done. It should be turned over to your painting guy now. It gives us a chance to have that rapport building talk. It gives you a chance to just humanize it. Then follow your agenda. We talked about the 40-70 Colin Powell rule already. We skipped ahead and got into that one, but this is present enough information that your clients can make a decision, but distill it down to red, yellow, green, a simple metric score, something that is actionable for your client so they can see what needs to be done and really deal with it. Visuals are better than bullet points. If you're not going to be up here standing, tap dancing, doing this kind of stuff, if you're a little shyer, then make sure you have some visuals involved that the client can look at. Last but not least, show, don't tell, which literally means get the reports out in front of the client, let them see where you're at, show them their budget, don't just tell them what's on it, and then wrap it up. This is make sure that when we leave, when we finish, we have a process for what's next. Get the feedback. How did we do? Did we deliver value? Should we be doing this on the same cadence? I see my action items, Dan, as being delivering you these 2 reports and sending something off to your finance department and sending you an invoice. I need you to get me the rest of those vendor invoices so we can get them included in your budget for next quarter. Do you see the same action items I do? Are we on the same page? Yep, good deal. We're wrapped. We can go. And then just make sure you follow up and do what you promised to do. Those are the big things. So that kind of wraps it up. And then with that, we're going to end with a quick announcement for Lifecycle Insights. So we didn't do a lot of sales pitching today. We don't do a lot of hard sales pitch at Lifecycle. If you guys know us, we're going to apologize for being a few minutes over here, but to PowerPoint or not to PowerPoint, some of you are comfortable making these. As somebody who was not when I first started this company and got involved, sometimes those are tough. You may want to present from Word documents, from other stuff, but you need to make sure that you have a method for getting all of your content out in front of your customer. It can take a lot of time to distill down exports from spreadsheets, put them in PowerPoints, and make them pretty. And one of the biggest values that we deliver today is something that we've released in Lifecycle Insights into beta, and this is our big announcement for today. We have introduced the concept of a presentation mode in our platform. So if you're familiar with Lifecycle Insights, we pull data out of ConnectWise, IT Glue, Autotask, Synchro, Dell, HP, Lenovo, Microsoft. We cobble it all together for you and make these pretty color-coded reports, and give you full-on budgets that show your customer how much money they need to spend, and we'll help you build your agenda. All that stuff's baked into the platform. Well, now we're giving you a way to present it without having to print it, bind it, and carry it out to deliver to your customer. That is in beta today, but we expect that to be out for everybody to play with in the very near future. So
you are announcing this to us right now today.
The only people who have heard this from us so far are our current partners who are actually beta testing. So wow. This is brand new. It is something that went into it. It only got released beta on Friday night or Saturday night last weekend. So wow. Brand spanking new. So if you guys haven't seen Lifecycle Insights, if you're not familiar with who we are, we are basically a company that's fanatical about our customers, about our customer success. We work with Dan on a regular basis on his MSP group stuff. So we wanted to come here and share this really cool news with you guys. We do have a coupon code for you. So if you want to come out and check out Lifecycle Insights, we always give away a 30-day free trial. But beyond the 30-day free trial, if you sign up using the coupon code EVERYTHINGMSP, you will get a $50 off your first 3 paying months. So you'll still get the 30-day free trial, but then you'll get a $50 discount every month for the first 3 months. You can visit us at lifecycleinsights.io/pricing.
Well, that is awesome. I'm really excited to hear about that feature of being able to bring that into a PowerPoint, because when you take a look at the amount of time it takes to pull all the reports together, and you're already helping save time with Lifecycle Insights by not having to grab all these reports from various vendors and having that a hodgepodge look. You just put it together in one pretty report, but to be able to convert that into a PowerPoint presentation, that's hot. That is really hot.
Yeah, we started the company on the concept that it took MSPs too long to get here. Our beta tester said it took them anywhere from 2 hours to 8 hours to prep for a business review for their customers. And what we found was the better the QBR they were giving, the company that we looked at as kind of the gold standard in our beta group originally, was the one that was taking 8 hours, because they were delivering that high quality content, and it just took them longer. They had a dialed in process. They knew exactly what it was. It was the same for every customer. All 4 account managers did it the same way, and it still took them forever, because the data that's in our PSAs was inaccurate. There wasn't anything to do to really clean it up and make it right. So every time they did it, they had to rebuild all the data from zero. The reporting took forever. It was just a very challenging process. And companies like that have it down to, an hour or 2 to prep. The companies who were taking an hour or 2 have upped their game. They're delivering a better business review, and they're prepping in an hour or under. So depending on where you're at in the process, we can save you time. We can make it easier and more automated. We can make the reports accurate for once. I don't know very many MSPs before they met us who could, with 3 clicks, spit out a 5-year budget forecast for their client. But that's what our customers are doing, right? And they'll actually go to the client and say, "Hey, I'm worried right now today about your 2023 spend or your 2024 spend, because it's 60% higher than the year before. We should be paying attention to that now, having that strategic conversation, instead of me surprising you January 1st, 2024, that you've got a big bill come due." And that's the difference between strategic and really a really tactical conversation. We want to have that bigger strategic conversation.
Excellent. I think we've answered any questions that have come through. I appreciate everybody.
Oh, we lost you, Dan. I believe we've lost Dan, but I'll finish where he left off. We appreciate you, everybody. Thanks for coming out. And he failed to prepare. He'll be back in a few minutes on his 4G internet. So Thanks everybody for coming out to hang out with us. If you guys are not already a member of Dan's group on Facebook, Everything MSP, search Facebook for the group Everything MSP and join it. It's a fantastic group, a lot of value. Again, Lifecycle Insights, our contact info is out here. Come out and check us out, and we appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you.